Hey, what's up? This is Jordan. I'm going to talk about my Jet City Custom 22. Um, Early on, the Jet City JCA 22 or JCA 20H was an amplifier that Jet City came out with that was designed by Soldano, and a very popular kind of Chinese made amplifier. Later on, I was excited when they announced the JCA Custom 22. This amplifier is very similar to that. It has two channels, shared EQ on both channels, but this one is more of a Marshall flavor. And it is a very kind of high gain, dark Marshall flavor, designed by Martin Kidd. Martin Kidd's the guy who did the Victory amps. I guess he's the owner, maybe CEO, whatever. If not that, then definitely the designer. And if I could guess what this sounded like, I would say it's kind of close to the Victory Kraken sound. It is a very thick, kind of chewy, dark, overdrive on channel 2. In my opinion, just amazing. Channel 1 starts off with a kind of a crunch tone, not really clean. So I thought I needed to clean that up and maybe make a few modifications to the overdrive channel to kind of make this amp mine. So I'll kind of talk through some of the changes that I did from front to back. Starting at the kind of the IEC jack, that's where the power comes in. Over here, I put a hum eliminator right on the ground wire. So basically you disconnect the ground jack, or the wire that goes to the ground lug of the jack, and you install this bad boy right here. I've put this on several amps. This is basically apparently the same design as an actual product that is called the hum eliminator. I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but I do know that this 100% works for me. I did have one friend whose amp had quite a bit of hum coming in. I think like 60 cycle hum or something like that. And he lived in an older house. Put this bad boy in, cleared it right up. This amp does not have any hum, obviously right off the bat, but it doesn't hurt to pop this bad boy in there. So what this is it's two diodes and one resistor. The diodes are 6 amp 1000 volt diodes. You literally just look up 6 amp 1000 volt diodes, and they're these big fatties. And that's a 1 ohm resistor in the center there. That's basically, I think this might be a 2 or a 3 watt resistor. It has to be at least 1, but I think this is a 3. So it could be 1, 2, or 3 watt. And you should be good. You literally just put this right in line at the ground. So anyway, moving on, kind of some of the obvious stuff that I did, some of the more popular stuff, the choke. So I guess I'll move on to the choke. So the choke, basically you take out one of the larger resistors here at R52, literally lift that up, and you send one wire. You can't see the choke, it's mounted to the chassis on the other side. You send one wire from where that resistor used to be to one side of the choke, one side of that resistor, or the other side of that resistor to the other lead of the choke. Simple as that. But while in there, I thought I would also install sag resistors. Now the sag resistors kind of mimic what a tube rectifier does. It doesn't drop the voltage across the board like a tube rectifier does, but what it does do is it allows for some sag when you're playing at loud volumes and you do like big loud chords or big clean chords. It allows the voltage to sag a little bit and gives you a kind of a different feel. So you don't really feel this if you're playing it at lower volumes. And that's these 3 resistors right here. Those are 3 wire wound resistors, and each one of those is 47 ohms. If you can get 50 ohms, that's great too, right? So it's not quite 150 ohms, but each one of those is a 5 watt wire wound resistor, and those are all in series, okay? And so where this these three resistors come in. It's kind of a stack of them. They kind of have like an S deal going on. Like I said, they're in series. Okay. So the input and the output of this bad boy is right where R52 and R51 meet up. Here's R51, right? R52 is the one that we removed to put the choke in. So where those two resistors meet up, on the other side of the board, there's a trace. A trace is one of these guys, for example, right here, this like silver line. You can see where it kind of bubbles up. This is a trace, right? So what you do is you just Dremel a line and separate that connection on the other side right here. And that's where you would put the sag resistors. Okay, so my moving on. My Mesa amps, Lone Star, I'm on my second stiletto right now. I have a different video coming out regarding that. But anyway, those amps have fans, basically the same, 12-volt fans that computers have. So I thought, why not install a fan on this amp? Now, do you need an amp? I don't know. All I know is that standing behind those fans, kind of close up on those amps, you can feel the heat in the exhaust like just pouring out. And if you know anything about electronics, that's like one thing that is detrimental to electronics is the heat. So can I verify that, adding a fan is going to, expand the life of this amplifier? I have no idea. Will it expand the life of the tubes? I don't know. Does it hurt? Does it kill the tone? Absolutely not. So what I did is I needed to find a place to draw the 12 volts from. And that's really all you need to do is you just need to draw the 12 volts. And obviously you've got ground anywhere you can get it, on this. And, I wired it to a switch basically right here. So the red and black wires right here, I'm grabbing the 12 volts directly from V5 pin 5. So that's that guy right there. And I think I'm grabbing ground pretty much from anywhere. In this case, on the switch itself, one leg of the switch, I don't think you can see it, kind of loops around and it goes into like one of those circular mounts, so that like the on-off switch, that mounts directly up to the chassis, has that threaded head on it. And that circular mount is between the chassis and that circular part of the switch itself. So it's literally grounding right on the chassis itself. You can ground that pretty much anywhere for the fan and no big deal. So did I need all this extra, twisted wire? No, I didn't. But that's just what I did. So I'm running a fan. You'll see it maybe later. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. So starting on the clean channel, I did change, I think, just two things in the clean channel, and it really helped this amp quite a bit. And it wasn't the first two things I changed. Like I experimented with quite a bit, and I didn't like the results that I was getting. But two main things that really helped, actually one main thing and one supporting thing that really helped the clean channel. So the main one was the cold clipper on channel 1. So this is like a cascading gain type of amp. It's a 2-channel amp, right? But basically that second channel is just stacking on more tubes, more gain stages to the first stage. Anyway, so R4 is the cold clipper of the first channel. And what I did, so R4, where is it at on here? R4 is this guy right here. Okay. I changed that from 10K to 20K. And what that did is it gives you less harmonic gain. So harmonic gain kind of sounds like sizzle. If you do too much, it can kind of sound like buzz. And when you build a preamp, you add a little bit of that throughout multiple gain stages to build the tone of the amp. So you wouldn't want to have an extreme cold clipper, in my opinion, in one stage of the amp. You'd want to spread that out a little by little across the amp. Anyway, changing that right there reduced the harmonic gain enough to make the clean channel sound more clean. Now, one thing it did do is it made the channel even a little bit quieter, which is fine because that channel does have its own volume or like kind of master on it. So you can run the gain low and the master high and still have the same kind of output you did before, but with just cleaner tones. Okay. So that was the main thing that I did. The other thing I did is I just changed the bright cap. Okay, the bright cap on this amp used to have like a plug right here, and I think it connected to these two wires. Now these are just like kind of two dead wires, right? So I just did a traditional bright cap that connects two of the lugs of the gain pot, or I should say the volume pot. It just basically runs to a switch. So the two lugs of this, the two right lugs of the volume pot of the clean channel go to a switch that will either add in a 180 picofarad cap or take out that cap. I found I could have made this a three-way switch with two different bright switches and an off in the middle. I chose not to do that because I don't like, anyway, that's a lot of that's subjective, but I just didn't find any other like values that I really liked. And the reason is because with the gain setting somewhere between 0 and 3, that's low gain, that's clean on this amp. And that sounds great with this cap in, this bright cap in. Anything above 3, that it really starts to open up channel 1 of this amp, really brightening it and adding gain. So I switch off that switch if I want to use channel 1 as a traditional crunch channel. So to me, it's either or. It's like 0 to 3 or 4 to 10 on the gain. And if it's 4 to 10, I switch it off. If it's 0 to 3, I switch it on. Simple as that. Okay, so like I said, traditional bright cap right there. Looks like I did replace this pot. I forget why. Maybe it was scratchy. All right, so okay, let's talk about an obvious thing. Obviously, I put Sozo blue molded caps on pretty much all of this. I do have 2 mustard caps here and here, but these are the blue molded caps. This is one of those mods where it's like, I didn't feel like this was 100% necessary. It was more or less I wanted to experiment and just see how it sounded. So the blue mustard caps, I think if you read their website, don't quote me on this, but well, before I say that, I put these caps in. It was about $100, okay, including shipping, and that's pre-co. So I don't know what the prices are now. They're probably more. Who knows? As soon as I put these caps in and played the amp on the clean channel, I go, wow, that sounds way more Fendery. And that's something I can't really explain to you in a video. But basically, like, what it did is it did brighten up the amp a little bit, but it gave it this snappy, sort of more chimey feel. But not like, it didn't make it into a clean amp. It just gave it this snappy, sort of very distinct Fendery character. Okay. Now that was before I even did more research on the caps to find out that these are clones of early day caps, apparently, that were from Fender Bassman amps. So these aren't even like like Sozo, I feel like got their name in the last 20 years, making these mustard caps. You see those everywhere. People will rave about mustard caps, this and that. The blue molded ones, I believe the reissues, these ones came along a little bit longer, right? They're a little bit later in the Sozo game. And these are kind of some of their newer model stuff where they've matched the specs of these to like old stock Fendery stuff. So anyway, take it or leave it. I do feel like they were an upgrade in terms of feel, but in terms of tone, there is nothing wrong with the original capacitors that came in this amp. In fact, tone-wise, I would prefer the original, Chinese whatever caps they are over these because they're a little bit more like a little darker sounding, and they really fit this amp well. Now, it didn't make this amp into like a super bright whatever Fender amp by any means, but there was just really nothing wrong with the tone that justified getting these caps. But I can 100% testify to the fact that these feel better. They feel more open, more lively, like more snappy under the fingers somehow, some way than those other caps did. So is it worth it? Just based off what I just said, I don't know. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about, let's see what else we could talk about. Okay, the most interesting thing I did on this amp was add in this relay right here. Now, if you know anything about the Soldano amps, I don't know if they still do this or not. So I guess I can't really speak to the Soldano because I've only read that on forums. But the Jet City amps, early ones, were modeled after the Soldano and designed by the Soldano. So the preamp is very similar. And what you get is channel bleed between the amps. So when you go to the overdrive channel, when you go to the clean channel, you hear the overdrive channel bleeding through, right? And it's, I think, like something crazy, like a 1-to-10 ratio. And it's very annoying. And you can, if you listen to your amp, you can hear it and you can call it out. So I needed to find a way to get rid of that channel bleed. And the only way to do it is, to my knowledge, is on a relay. So what do I do? When you turn on the amp and your channel switch is set to channel 2, that's the normally closed mode of the relay here. When you switch it to channel 1, it will flip it over to channel 1. Anyway, that aside, let's try to break this down a little bit. So what the relay is doing is when you switch to channel, I'm kind of getting this mixed up here, but when you switch to the clean channel, you're now grounding the input of the overdrive channel. Okay, so you're grounding out this section right here, so you don't hear any of that bleed coming through. You don't hear the buzz and the fizzle of the overdrive channel anymore when you ground out this guy right here at this very point. So that says R12, right? So where is that R12? That is this resistor right here. So I'm grabbing ground from R15 just because it was convenient. Did I need to do that? 100% no. I could have got ground from anywhere, but I did have this, like, several feet of this twisted wire that I made just around, so I figured, okay, just use that. So basically the black is the ground, and it connects to one side of the relay on the back, and the red is the input of the high gain channel right where it needs to be. So it's literally, here's the resistor. I know you can't see it, but say this is the resistor right here. It's literally just connecting right to, the red wire's connecting right where the resistor goes into the board, but right here, right there. Okay, so whenever you switch channels, bam, it puts a ground on that, and it does not allow any bleeding between the two channels. So the next question is you have to know where on this preamp gives you the power, gives you the voltage when you need it. So how do you know you're going to get the correct voltage that is going to supply the voltage to the relay when you flip to channel 1? Okay, I found that on diode 4. So a diode allows, voltage to go one way. So obviously on this one side again is ground and the other side is going to be power. So D4 right here is where you're going to draw power from to run your relay. So you can run several relays. If you really want to mod the shit out of this preamp, that's where you draw your power from, right? So that basically allows you to have one thing happening for one channel but not happening for the other. Mesa, this has 2 relays that I can see right off the bat. Mesa amps have, my Stiletto has like 12, and I'm sure something like, I don't know, Road King has like 50 relays, like literally all over the place, right? Because you have all those modes and all those channels. That's the only way to accomplish that. You can't just do all that with double throw, double pole switches, or triple throw, double throw, whatever. You can't accomplish that with just switches. You have to start implementing relays. So that's all this is. So D4 is where you grab your power from, and this is the part that you ground. Okay, the other, I would say one of the last things I did to this board was put a treble pot for channel 2 over here. So when you're looking at the back of the amp, I can reach in with, of course, the back off, and I can adjust the treble of channel 2. So the reason why I did that is because I felt like I always have the treble lower on channel 2 than I do on channel 1. So they share treble, middle, bass, right? And out of all 3 of those shared EQ controls, the treble's always needing to be cut when I switch to channel 2, based off of my, what I like to hear. So I needed a way to dial that in. So I used another channel of this relay, right? So what do? You remove the pot from the board itself, and then you send, you send that, one pot to one side of the relay, and you send the other pot to the other side of the relay, and then you find where did these legs connect into the board, the 3 lugs of the legs, and that's where that's the signal that is being sent to this row of switches right here. So I could have did it all 3 right where I could have connected all 3 lugs or wires right where I pulled the pot out of the board, but instead I put them in different places. You'll see them in 3 different places that you could easily find on the schematic. When you pull that treble pot out, you literally just find, okay, where does the bass pot meet C15, and where does C14 meet the treble pot, and then where is this connection on the board? You literally just find those and you plug the wires in there, rather than, and I found that was more convenient than running the wires all the way back to where I pulled the 3 pins of the pot out of the board. Okay, if that makes sense. So super easy to do. It looks like a lot. Actually, in my opinion, that's pretty damn clean. None of this, believe it or not, adds any noise, but I would say it does bleed down the signal just a little bit. So this extra wire tames the amp a little bit in a good way, and kind of shaves off some of the brashness and the brightness, and in a positive way, because just like a long cable does, I feel like this was adding some capacitance as well by having these long cable leads. Okay, again, one of these is ground. I did not, so I have a ground here, and a long ass ground here. I didn't need to run that long of grounds on any one of those. That's not really hurting the signal. I'm just saying, if you see that and you're like, oh, what an idiot, he has ground all over the place, you didn't need to do that, you're 100% right. I could have shared a ground probably for several things that you see here, including the fan. Okay, but whatever, I don't care. One last thing, or 2 more things I think I did to the preamp on the channel 2 is I changed the treble capacitor, which is, I think, sometimes called the tone stack capacitor, this guy right here. I changed it from 330 picofarad to 470. You're going to have to look at what the tone stack calculators do when you make that. I can't really explain it. I could, but I don't want to. The 500 or 470 is more traditional Marshall value, and honestly the 330 wasn't bad, but it worked with my speaker setup. So I encourage you to mess with this treble capacitor right here, anywhere from 330 up to 500 and anywhere in between. Okay, I did not mess with the slope resistor. Actually, I did, but I felt that the 47K fit it perfectly. So you can put anything from a 33 to a 39, 47, or 56 and still call this a British tone stack. Still call it a Marshall tone stack with any one of those values in the slope. You could do 330 or 500 and still call it a British tone stack right here. I'm sorry, this isn't the slope, the treble capacitor or the tone stack capacitor. Sometimes it's called this guy right there. Okay, now let's talk about the middle capacitor, the mid cap C16. I changed that from 33 nanofarads to 20 or 22, I believe. Yeah, 22. And that really helped. Again, that's something you would have to see physically on the screen to see what it did to the EQ curve and what it did more importantly to the mid, like where the mids are going to sit as far as when you scoop it, right? So when you get to that tone stack capacitor online, Google the online tone stack capacitor and then cut the mids a little bit, you're going to see where the Q is. So these three things right here change where the Q is and what's capable of being cut or boosted in the tonal spectrum. And those things could be like your style, your taste, what you like to hear, or B, it could be matching this amp's preamp to your speakers. And I have Alnico Blue speakers in this. I have them from Weber, not Celestion, because Celestion only makes them in 15-watt versions. That's not enough. That breaks up too soon and that's way too bright. So I like the tone of those, but I need more power handling. Not because I need more power handling so I don't blow them, but because more power handling tames a lot of the brightness and the brashness that high gain could yield. Okay, so that's why I like Alnico Blue speakers for my tone, for my overdrive tones and my clean. Okay, so you can do a lot in the tone stack to make the amp yours. So anyway, let's see, just to recap what we did. I didn't talk about it, but I did change the IEC jack. I added the, what do you call that? Hum eliminator. I added the choke. That's the R52 kind of replacement that's bolted onto the other side of the amp. Where R52 and R51 meet, that is where you would put in these sag resistors, which mine total to about 150 ohms. You can even add more sag. I think you can probably go up to like 200, or you can go lower, less sag, down to 100. And again, you don't really notice this unless you have the amp really cranked. Other things that I did is I changed out all of the tone caps, the capacitors from, stock ones to Sozos. Again, that didn't necessarily help the tone as much as it did the feel of the amp, 100%. Channel 1, I changed the, lost my train of thought there, R4 from 10 to 20, and that is the cold clipper. There you go. There's the word. Cold clipper. I changed from 10K to 20K. I changed I forget what the stock value of the bright cap was in the clean channel, but I put that basically on a traditional switch right here to 180 picofarad. Then I did the channel bleed mod, which basically grounds out this resistor right here. I told you earlier, but that's R12. The bottom leg of R12 gets grounded with a relay, and this relay gets its power from D7. That's a diode that you can't see that's right behind there. So it has a positive and it has a 12-volt charge and it has a negative on the other. And so that's where I'm getting, whenever I switch to channel 2 or channel 1, that's what's activating this actual relay to switch, on and off based on that diode. So whenever that diode activates, it's activating the relay. Also on the same relay, I outsourced basically another treble pot back here that I can control from the back of the amp that, for channel 2. So I could have independent trebles for both channels. On the channel 2, I changed the treble capacitor, also known as the tone stack capacitor, from 330 picofarads to 470 to flavor this amp to my speakers. And then I also changed the middle capacitor, C16, which I can't remember where it is out of all these right now, but I changed C16 from 33N to 22. Okay, so let's quickly flip this over because this video is getting stupid long. Okay, ain't no edits either, so deal with it. All right, so here's some cosmetic mods I did. These are white washers that I literally just found at Harbor Freight to match these cool white chicken head knobs. These are the ones that don't have this stupid extra hump on them. And there's my white knobs. I put a green switch on here. Here's my computer fan that is unfortunately glued to the chassis. This glue has not melted or wiggled or moved at all, even despite the heat. I do change out my tubes quite a bit just to try different tones. I settled on a Mullard right there in V1. Sometimes I do a 57, 51 in any one of these three positions just to 57, 51s are awesome to play with. And I also put the 57, 51 in the V5, which is the phase inverter, and that sounds badass. I love Mesa EL84s in the power section. That's right there. Here's my on-off switch for the fan. Here is my treble pot right there for channel 2. It's, you know, and then here's my new jack. So that's pretty much everything I did to this, and this amp sounds badass, especially with my Alnico Blues. And, you know, just sounds awesome to me. So let me know if you have any questions. That's that.